So I just had you watch a documentary on Carnegie, at least beginning section of it, and I think it really helped give you a lot of visualization of the conditions of the times and a lot of the contradictions. And as you read through this chapter and you look about this kind of issue of a celebration of men of wealth that rise to the top through their hard work, and at the same time, a major resentment of their, involvement in politics or what would be seen as corruption, and the treatment of the workers. And, on one hand, I just kind of want to say this. While today, I talked about comparing some of these issues that are so still important today, it is a little bit different now, or maybe a lot different, in the fact that these rich and powerful men were creating jobs in the United States, and the issues was with workers in the United States. And now we have the issue that many businesses of industry are actually shipped overseas. The treatment of the workers is actually the same as it was then, but in places where they can get away with it. But now there's not the jobs, and there is, we don't see that kind of growth or that kind of accessibility for people who come from nothing and rise to the top. And some people, from the business side argue that it was workers demanding for so much rights and better pay is why businesses could no longer compete here, and that's why they left. That's one of the debates that takes place over the current conditions, okay? And I'm not going to resolve that with this right now. Now, we learned that Carnegie was just one of these characters. Rockefeller was another one that was in oil. And essentially, these men were viewed as robber barons. This was, as it mentions here, a pejorative name for big business leaders. And it wasn't just that they became wealthy through hard work, but the issues that people had was them making it through devious business practices, exploitation of workers, and political manipulation. And you saw some of that in the Carnegie video, right? And I think that Carnegie documentary was very fair to Carnegie in that he himself had a lot of conflict about his actions, and some people making the hypothesis that maybe his generosity that he gave so much away later on was to make himself feel better ultimately about what he did to get all that wealth. And again, that's also something that each individual can decide if they think that is a noble, does that make up for what he did? In a sense, it's kind of, you think about like the play and the film Orphan Annie. Isn't it kind of interesting? I remember I watched this when I was younger, the film, and you get this really ruthless business tycoon around the same time period. And little Orphan Annie ends up winning him over. And through it, he almost gets his humanity back. It doesn't actually say that he changes his business practices or his ways, but there's this adorable man deep inside that Annie draws out, and he takes care of this girl as if that somehow changes what his character was, as was demonstrated in the movie or the play. I mean, it's interesting, right? I don't know. You'll have your own thoughts on that stuff. But ultimately, you saw something also with these elites, as you saw with Carnegie, is this desire to be seen as respectable and maybe even a patron of the arts, on top of this reputation that on one hand they acted as if they liked it. On the other hand, it seems that they really didn't feel comfortable in those positions. Now, I just have this film clip here. It's very short. It's from a great movie that kind of deals with these early time periods in America. I highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest movies that most people don't seem to have watched it. It's called Cradle Will Rock, not The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I think that's like a cheesy like horror film about like a psycho babysitter or something. But the Cradle Will Rock, and it depicts a scene that we know that took place possibly. Oops, I got some text. In actuality, we're not quite sure if this is how it happened, but if you know who Frida Kahlo is and Diego Rivera, the great Mexican muralists, Rockefeller heard of them and he paid them to put a mural up, or Diego Rivera particularly. There's the same scene is shown in another movie about Frida Kahlo herself. It's called Frida, that Selma Hayek plays, and this is a different. They have a little different interpretation of this scene. And then Lenin, if you don't know, is the founder of the communist Russian Revolution, and he paints him in there. He was a kind of millionaire communist, contradiction in his own right. And so here's a depiction of Rockefeller stumbling across this. And again, this was based on true history. Rockefeller pays this rich communist muralist to paint for him in one of his centers, but not under the understanding that there would be anything communist in it. So here we go.
Why can't you paint another face over it?
Would you prefer Stalin? I don't. I was kicked out of the Communist Party for disagreeing with him. But if you want, I'll paint Stalin.
You're not being very cooperative.
I am too. I told you that I would paint Abraham Lincoln surrounded by freed slaves to counterbalance Lenin, and you rejected the idea.
Why Lenin?
He's a revolutionary leader, like your Washington and Jefferson.
Hey, there's an idea. Paint Jefferson.
That's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea at all.
What do you say?
What do you say?
That's ridiculous. I said Abraham Lincoln to balance Lenin, but Lenin stays.
This is not a revolution, Diego. This is United States. It's not Russia.
And I am Diego Rivera, not Frederick Remington.
You understand that it is entirely inappropriate to feature a communist leader in the lobby of a Rockefeller building.
No, I believe nothing in art is inappropriate. I paint what I see.
We're going to have to insist that the face be removed.
Absolutely not.
Look, you son of a bitch, we're trying to be nice. This is betrayal.
Betrayal?
Yes. There was no indication in your sketches you would be featuring communist leaders in the mural. You were hired on the basis of said sketches, and you've changed them. It's not fair.
Lenin stays.
How the...
And in actuality, Rockefeller had that mural removed, destroyed, and then Diego Rivera repainted it in Mexico, I believe. And so we do know what it looks like. We do have it. Man at the Crossroads is the painting. What I did like about showing you this clip is the way that, if you remember, I was telling you that Marxism was more popular at the time than maybe I think a lot of people realize in parts of the world, because the majority of the world has been poor, and Marxism kind of spoke to the workers. And we didn't see a communist revolution until World War I. So you have to keep in mind that in these early parts of here, we're doing the industrial America 1865 to 1900, actually seeing what socialism or communism would look like has not took place yet. Okay, so this is kind of depicting a later reflection, with Rockefeller. An episode that happened, but my point is that those movements, socialists and communists and those kind of things, were a response to what was seen as the excess of capitalism, and at the same time, the capitalists wanted to draw from people who are of quality, people, average people. Here they are patronizing artists that have this politics, and Diego Rivera was also having no problem taking the money of capitalists to do this painting. So maybe everybody was feeling a lot of contradictions and inner conflicts about, where their priorities were at, or what kind of vision they had for the world, or what they really wanted to see going on. So these are just a few of the things that I kind of wanted to draw attention to while you're reading this text. These things cannot, I mean, this chapter can be very interesting or it can be a little bit dry depending on how you look at it. And I feel like the documentary clips actually kind of helps spice it up a little bit. I'm going to stop here and I'll go on to the next lecture and then we'll talk about this Sherman Antitrust Act.